Ready? Okay. There are some pieces I don't know in the room, so it's nice to see you. I'm Becca Wassell. I'm the Yakima Basin Program Director for Mid-Columbia Fisheries. I work with Stevens and others. The project I'm presenting today is the Iron Creek Wood Replenishment Project. It's a partnership with Yakima Nation Fisheries and Forest Service, specifically the Clay Elm Ranger District. And my primary partner on the project, Jeff Nelson, is on the line. Is he able to talk? Can you say hi?
Can you hear us, Jeff?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Hey,
Okay, great.
thanks for joining us, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here.
Okay, so the project in a nutshell is that after the Labor Mountain Fire, Clay Elm Ranger District arranged to sell Mid-Columbia Fisheries more than 1,000 logs that were cut as hazard trees along Iron Creek for firefighting efforts. They're already decked, cutting about 25-foot lengths right along the creek. And our project proposal is for the funding to take the wood and place it into the stream to create habitat and floodplain reconnection. There's also about a ½ acre of road decommissioning and riparian restoration, and a small outreach and education effort included in the proposal. Okay, any questions? No, just kidding. All right. So the project is located in the Swat Creek watershed. If you were traveling from Ellensburg to Leavenworth on Highway 97, this would be just before you got to the old Blewett Pass Highway. It's on your left when you're traveling north. Iron Creek is a really nice place to ski in winter. There's a pretty fantastic trail at the end of this road. Beyond that, there's some dispersed camping and hunting, very popular place to look for Christmas trees. But otherwise a fairly undeveloped watershed. It's part of the Forest Service's Upper Swat Environmental Assessment, a much larger scale watershed health project that is underway right now. Expected decision this spring. Anything change on that, Jeff?
No changes. I think early June, early summer, maybe more than late spring, but yeah, no changes.
And this wood replenishment action is an included action in the assessment. So the NEPA, the ESA, and the cultural resources environmental compliance work will be completed when that environmental assessment is signed. Project will treat 3.5 miles of stream with a series of structures that Jeff has created conceptual designs for, and then they will be field fit on the ground. So it'll be in Iron Creek, in West Fork Iron Creek, and in Hubby Creek, which is a tributary right near the mouth of Iron Creek. And currently in these streams, they're similar to many of our forested streams that have had a legacy of wood removal and riparian logging. The streams have been straightened in places and there are roads adjacent to them. So in most of the length of these streams, we're lacking complexity and floodplain connection is limited. Oh, I meant to going to give you a quiz to see how many dogs you could find in the slides as we go forward. So first dog is here. Yeah. Okay, this is Oakley, Mike's dog, caught by the drone. So again, this is a place on Iron Creek where there's the opportunity for floodplain connection, and we're not currently seeing that in most flows because of the lack of complexity, lack of hydraulic roughness, and in places where the stream has cut down. And this is Ospey there. I will say dogs like simplified stream channels. It's easier. The historic land use in the watershed is again similar to many of our managed stream systems. So we have seen mining and timber harvest and road construction, direct removal of wood from the channels, but also harvest of the riparian areas so that there's less wood contributed. We're seeing fewer pools and cover, less areas for fish to hide than we would expect in an unmanaged system. We're not seeing the floodplain connection that we would like to see to hold water on the landscape longer. And particularly in Swat Creek, in the Swat system, partially just because of aspect, we experience very high summer water temperatures. So there's a focus in this watershed wherever we can be enhancing any water temperature refuge that already exists or creating more shade and more groundwater connection. It's a very high priority for the watershed. And this is the system where beaver just keep trying to reestablish and keep getting hit on the highway. So we have not seen beaver able to do the work that we'd like them to do in the Iron Creek system. It's just a really dangerous place to try and set up shop. And so we know that we have steelhead in Swamp Creek up and beyond Iron Creek, and that we have every reason to believe that juvenile steelhead are using the Iron Creek system. We don't have that documented or any numbers, Katie. Right? But we do have documented steelhead spawning throughout Swamp Creek in this area. All right, it's good to point. I'm going to start to address the Citizens Committee criteria on the bottom here. So give a shout if you see something of concern there. And in addition to the steelhead, we expect this project to be beneficial for juvenile Chinook rearing, which happens downstream in the SWAC system, juvenile coho rearing, which is dependent on where they have been placed during the coho reintroduction effort, and then resident rainbow and cutthroat trout, which are both documented as present in the Iron Creek system. And the key limits to the success of all 5 of those species in the system are related to the same habitat degradation factors we discussed already. We're not seeing gravel sorting processes that are self-sustaining in the system. We're seeing elevated water temperatures throughout the SWAC and its tributaries. We anticipate that there's high levels of scour for reds that are established because of that lack of hydraulic roughness. Channels are constrained, less places to make a living if you're a young fish. And, you know, it's well documented in literature that one of the benefits of wood is that increased surface and the increased productivity for macroinvertebrates in the system. So decreased wood, decreased food for fish. And we've got wood that we can put back in there. So again, we have 3 decks of wood. We think it's about 1,000 pieces. We have tried to count them about 3 times now. Anyone who's tried to count a deck of wood can say it is very hard to do. I had a pretty good conversation with AI where I tried to get AI to help me count the wood, and it had some very fun hallucinations about it. But we paid $56 for these approximately 1,000 pieces of wood. So it's not fully accurate to say they were donated, but they were essentially donated for habitat restoration. And with this, I'm going to turn it to Jeff to talk about the overall site plans and the conceptual designs for the wood replenishment. And Jeff, just give a word when you'd like me to advance.
I can get, oh, there we go. Okay, can you guys hear me? Sorry, I was having a hard time with the mute button. Yeah, thanks, Becca. So, like Becca said, this project has kind of come together really quickly. These trees just got felled like mid to late September last year. The original intent was actually to head them over to West Fork Teanaway, but then they weren't needed over there. So we're putting this together on the fly. So these designs are super conceptual, but I guess just intended to kind of convey a couple different intents throughout the different project reaches. So what we're looking at here, north is on the right side of the screen and stream flow is from right to left. So its orientation's a little awkward here, but looking at the confluence of West Fork Iron Creek and Iron Creek, and I guess the kind of thing, what I want to point out, I guess, is a couple that you can see the polygons and then you can see the individual structures. And I guess none of us have spent a ton of time out here thinking about this yet, but my concept is that within those polygons, it appears from the digital, from the relative elevation model, but there is some floodplain space. They don't really pop on LiDAR, but I suspect we could find and map quite a few small historic flow paths and slightly disconnected side channels. So within those polygons, the intent would be to reactivate any floodplain surfaces, side channels we could find, wood would generally be placed. It would be touching, but the structures, quote unquote, would be like very broad, intended to kind of maximize that valley width profile. It probably wouldn't be super high unless we needed to stack a few pieces together to maybe activate a side channel, things like that. The other important thing I want to mention about wood sources is that throughout this reach, there's quite a bit of grand fir understory, just you can't even walk through it kind of stuff. From a silviculture perspective and fuel reduction, just forest ecology perspective, we'd like to reduce some of that. So we anticipate getting quite a few kind of small 7-inch DBH or less grand fir, potentially with small root wads. The intent, those are like slash that's going to fill in some of those porous spaces that we get when we just kind of start tacking those, pickup sticks, process logs from those decks. Kind of just, basically plug that gap, trap gravel and sediment. Just spread the water out, slow it down. Big objectives. The alternate sections that have those individual structures, this is going up West Fork Iron Creek. This is a good one to talk about this anyway, because it's a little more confined and a little steeper generally. The intent of those structures is really going to depend on what it looks like when we get out there. I see a couple reaches that are really overly straightened. Maybe an opportunity if there is a little valley, if there is a little room in the valley bottom to get some bank blasters, try to induce a little bit of sinuosity. In places where maybe the stream isn't sized and pretty single thread, but the sinuosity is still there. Those structures will be designed to build point bars and scour pools on the outsides of those bends, as well as provide cover and break up energy. Something that interesting that's happened this year, not even very little fire actually spread into the Iron Creek watershed. So it really, I think, is just an effect of the precipitation we got this winter. A lot of these little side drainages that you see coming in moved some sediment in. There's some nice, hydrology happened. It was pretty cool. So this feels like a great time to add some wood and structure and help sort and process that through the system and kind of get the gravels where we want them. We've moved up to West Fork Iron Creek now, and so at the very upper end, kind of where we propose to work, is one section of decommissioned road. I think it's about 500 feet in length out there. It crosses a pretty nice alluvial fan from an intermittent tributary. The road cuts caused a bunch of sedimentation issues. So this would give us an opportunity to kind of reshape that, plant it, stabilize it in the future. We can cruise up further up Iron Creek. I'm not sure which slide you have next, Becca.
Did I point to the road? Is this the road you're mentioning right here? Oh, you can't see where I'm pointing. Sorry.
I can't see where you're pointing. It's the hash line in the left side of the picture.
So
right under the inset map.
Yeah, got it.
Okay, yeah, I mean, Hovey Creek, same thing. We had to kind of have a short stretch of Hovey Creek to work with here. I actually moved the bottom of the project area downstream end up a little bit from the proposal just to kind of get away from the road crossing and that really tight pinch point at the downstream end. And flow is from left to right here, by the way. That pinch point just seemed like a good place to kind of start to keg everything up and get some deposition going, not to the point where we're building a dam, but it just seemed like a good anchor point to work off of going upstream. But same concept. Grab the floodplain where it's available, enhance the habitat where maybe the floodplain isn't available, and then help sort gravel. So yes, super simple conceptuals. I suspect when we get out there and start looking around, we might have 1 or 2 or 3 more that end up going into a contract if it all comes to be. On the left is kind of an example of that small side channel reconnection. Get a lot of roughness in the main channel, set some wood to kind of maintain that head of that bar, and at those higher flows, push water into the side channel, as well as keep it spread out over the top of that floodplain surface in between the two channels, if possible. The middle one there, that's kind of, I guess, what I was trying to show here as an example of how I was kind of thinking we could use that small wood and slash that we're going to get on site, kind of anchored with the larger pieces. On that inside of the bend, I see that as, where we're going to start to get aggradation, point bar building. That's going to kind of eventually help move that channel and keep that scour on the downstream left bank, maintain that pool. I didn't show it here, but I also love to get some of that kind of coarse material across the pool tail and make that, if you can, a grade material there, and kind of build that pool tail higher and get depth that way. The last one here is just kind of some of those induced sinuosity, and these could be used singly or in stages, just kind of recruit gravel off the bank, where it is really incised or constrained, just get as much as we can, take some energy out of it. Again, build bars and inset floodplain if we're able to, things like that. Yeah, I'm not sure what's next. Let's go to the next slide if there is one.
It's fun to surprise you with these. I was going to take over at this point, which is just to thank you, Jeff. Thanks for putting those together, and thanks for the good explanation.
Yep.
The slide is just highlighting the way that the project fits into the recovery plan, which is for in-stream and floodplain habitat complexity, and then again that approximately ½ acre of direct riparian recovery with the road decommissioning. We will suggest that those fit with TAG focus project numbers 18 and 24, which is swamp habitat and then swamp riparian areas. I understand that that'll be for the TAG to discuss whether you think those fit well in those focus areas. I think I haven't mentioned yet that this builds on a surfboard funded assessment from started in 2008 and completed in 2010 to look at restoration opportunities and priorities in Swamp and Iron Creek in this area. Large wood replenishment was what was identified for Iron Creek. That assessment was actually dealing with the lower part of the creek, and for a couple of different reasons, both infrastructure constraints and a desire to do a little bit more larger scale work than just wood replenishment. This proposal is actually starting upstream of where the assessment suggested we would. And then as described, this is already included in the Forest Service's environmental compliance. Building on their significant investment in getting that work done. New advancement.
Dragon.
So we expect to see really nice changes in these 3.5 miles of stream from the series of wood structures that are proposed. We'll expect to see increased pool frequency, greater depths to the pools that are there. There should be places where fish are able to find cooler water in summer, and then in winter with greater groundwater connection from the wood structures, there should be areas where you will have more groundwater moderated, warmer temperatures in winter. There will be pockets of floodplain reconnection. As Jeff said, we don't see huge expanses of potential floodplain here, but in the size of the streams that we're dealing with, increased floodplain in sections along there will have a benefit on decreasing the in-stream power of water during floods. And there will be more fish food because of this really significant addition of wood.
Oh.
But do you remember which one? With, sorry, so that's Oski again. And he's so happy because he's like, look at this side channel that will be reconnected when we have some wood following Jeff's design that will move water up into that area. One of the benefits, even on a small scale like this, is just holding water on the landscape longer. We know that wood creates greater connection with the hyporheic, and where the substrate is appropriate, we will expect to see greater storage of water longer into the season for this. It creates an element of resilience to drought conditions and to climate change and increases in temperature. There are all sorts of benefits to decreasing road density in this watershed, and even this quarter mile of road will make a benefit on decreasing the drainage network, small decrease in sediment input. And I'm more excited just about the opportunity to restore riparian condition in this footprint. And there's a lot of area that's analyzed under the Upper Squawk Environmental Assessment, and to be able to jump in and start this first action really as soon as the ink is dry, will create really exciting momentum for us to start implementing that restoration work. Okay, so there are several things that could create challenges. There could be another fire. We have time. We'd like to do this work this fall. We'd like to move that wood into the creek as soon as the CERT board funding were approved. But it doesn't have to be done that fast. And so we have a couple of seasons that we can adjust to if there are restrictions on our work because of the drought or fire season. There is mining claim in the area, well posted, and the Forest Service has been communicating with the miners as part of the EA. And we will continue that education and outreach as part of this project. I hope that Jeff keeps working without interruption this year, but we have had some interruptions in the past year. And again, if that were to happen, we have time in this grant to wait until he's back. And the project is field fit, which gives a really nice flexibility for making sure that when we're out there on the ground, we're putting in the treatment that best fits the conditions. Project request is just about 136,000. The cost for the channel wood placement is based on 2 quotes from local contractors. They came in really close to each other, so we feel pretty good about their quotes. There's a small amount included for public education, both outreach to the miners and recreationists, and then also participation in the 4th grade camp that happens right here every year. It's a great opportunity to tell the kids about the value of wood and streams. There will be some cultural resource monitoring required. Some small amount of additional permitting will need to document that this fits under the Forest Service's agreements with WDFW and the Corps of Engineers. And then Mid-Columbia Fisheries will be taking indirect on the project. I put an estimated there because as we're moving, this is going to be the first year that we're taking indirect on our CERT board grants. And so we are determining what that percentage will be. It won't exceed this, but it may be less than that. I don't think there's a dog in this one. Thank you. Questions for Jeff or for me?
Jeff says more gravel sorting equals more gold.
That's true. Yeah. When we did the Little Dam Peaks project, the miners were excited to get in there right away after the work.
Outreach,
Putting citizens committee references in there.
Yeah, thanks for being on the citizens.
What is the flow and?
Great question. Do you have an estimate on flow, Jeff?
flow in Iron Creek, I think, base flow down lower where it hits Squawk is probably 5 CFS. I bet bank full down at that area is 50 to 75 maybe. It does get narrower as it goes up. I'd say where the West Fork hits Iron Creek, bank full width's probably in the 12 to 12-ish range, 12 to 14 range. That culvert's way undersized. It's in the Squawk EA too. Yeah, that's a guess, but does that answer the question?
Yeah.
5 CFS seems very high for base flow. We're lucky to have 3 CFS in Swamp Creek below Iron Creek. I think there's stretches where it's probably 1 CFS or less. Is that fair? Or even, are there intermittent reaches through the project area?
I haven't observed. I don't know how there's done.
Yeah.
I think I would note that from Iron Creek down, I think you actually lose a lot of flow in Squawk, where, you know, to the point where I think that, yeah, I don't know. I think your point is fair, Alex. I'm not going to argue between 3 CFS and 5, but there is more water, noticeably more water higher up in the watershed, I think. Although I will note that Squawk itself has gone dry down by like Baker Creek last year and the year before. So there's that.
In terms of the wood design, we've seen really mixed results from, these kinds of smaller pieces without root wads, especially when they end up spanning around, places where they've been really effective, places where they've been much less so. This seems like an ideal site to also play with the PALS concept. So if you've got lots of small stuff, actually portable pile driving and creating structures literally right in the low flow channel, that it's often hard to point the longer logs into and hold them there. Is that something you guys have considered at all? And what would that mean for contract? It'd just be a slightly different approach with that pile driving, lots of small material jammed together and whatnot.
We didn't talk about the pile driving. We use the post pounder typically when we're doing that. But Jeff mentioned that there's that really thick dog hair of Douglas fir in the riparian area, and that the thinning of that is part of the EA. So the intention is to be incorporating that small material in with these cut logs, which I think is going to be much more effective than places where we've done the logs on. Jeff, have you been thinking about trying to complement that with PALs or BDAs?
I wasn't thinking of BDAs necessarily, but I did, I think, make a note on one of my captions, and I didn't mention it while I was talking about, considering using small posts. I also would consider keying the butt end into the bank a few feet with the excavator just to kind of maintain, kind of mimic that root wad stability. So yeah, definitely mulling around a couple options there. I like I want to mess around with getting a lot of the fine material in there. That's what I kind of see in these smaller steams driving that deposition. Since I'm talking, I'll just add something that, I think as we're going through this reach, we're going to find wood structures that we like, and we can, if that's the case, I would totally just do it typical based on some of the stuff we were seeing and the effects we were seeing. So short answer is yes, I would totally consider some posts out there.
I mean, I just think of what they've done on the Upper Toucan and the Asotin with hand crews being really effective, basically creating structures out of smaller materials in real strategic ways. And what it might just mean budget wise, in addition to a contractor with an excavator having a week or 2 or 3 of hand crew time built in the budget, if that's an approach that makes sense to take here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add that we are doing, Mid-Columbia is doing that on the tributary streams to the Tanaway. They're also finding it to be very effective, particularly in the December floods. We saw really great siltating. So you start saying Tanaway trips when you're listening to the.
And that's something I'm excited. I mean, just in general, I'm excited to work with Mid-Columbia and Yakima Nation and, build off of their experience plus mine. I mean, my hope is that this is a very collaborative process when we do this field fit, and I'm open to trying different things and seeing what we all like after it's all said and done as well. So, yeah, I'll add that.
Other questions? Anything you'd like to see at site tours?
Yeah. Katie said gold.
Will we be able to get up the road to the actual project reach easily at site tours, or is this something we should be tracking as we plan?
I think we can get everywhere. Well, Hubby Creek Road is a little bit iffy sometimes. The other two, I think so. What do you think, Jeff?
I think you're right. I might take a drive and see if I need to cut any trees out of the road, but I think we can get to most everywhere.
Good to hear. Same question to ask Stephen. Is there any uncertainties that you expected the tag or CC to press you on that we have not?
No, I'm glad we had that discussion about the small diameter wood, because I think that's critical, and I'm excited that that's incorporated into both what the environmental assessment analyzed and what we're expecting to do with these chemicals.
Okay, looks like we might be wrapping up early.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Enjoy the rest of your afternoons. Have fun here.
Will do.